Welcome back to PageKey Solutions for quick Python number 5, writing to files. I'm Steve, and today we're going to have a basic example of writing to files, and we're going to learn about writing modes. Append and write are all we're going to talk about today. In our last video, you saw the read mode, so now we get to learn about the different types of write modes. As always, we'll go through our learning checklist, starting with why we need to know how to write to files, what we'll be producing at the end of the video, and how we can get there. First of all, why write to files? Well, it's pretty straightforward. It's a big step. Writing to files allows you to save data off for later use and save data that other applications will use. You can actually output something useful to other applications from your Python script. For example, you can create a comma-separated values file pretty easily just by putting commas between any number of values and writing each of those as a line to the file, and then Excel or Google Sheets or whatever can open that CSV file and read it as a spreadsheet and eventually save it as a spreadsheet with all the formatting and everything, but really it's just the data that's stored in the CSV, no formatting. With that out of the way, we can see what we're actually going to build today. So if you go into the 05 folder in the quick Python folder in the education repository, a link to which is in the description, you will see we have two files, our program and append versus write. So we'll start out with our program, and you can tell it a file name for it to write to. So I'm going to say output.txt. And what do you want to write to the file? How about hello there, not hello world? Switching it up. How many times should we write it? You can put any number in here, but I'll just put 5. And it said writing line 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4, a total of 5 lines written to output.txt. If we cat that file and see what's inside of it, you'll see that it wrote it 5 times. As for the other example there, append versus write, if we run this, it's kind of going to show us a little something about those two modes. It says run it multiple times to see the difference between append and write modes. So it wrote to write.txt and append.txt. You'll see them on other sides here, opposite sides. If you open up append and write, they look exactly the same pretty much. They both have timestamps in them. If we run it again, now what happens if you look at append, you'll see that there are 2 lines in there. Write only has the most recent line. So remember that for later. It'll be important when we talk about how this all works. So if we open up our program.py here, we'll see some familiar things. First of all of these inputs that we're gathering should look familiar from lesson 2 and from the ones after it. We're just using the input command to grab strings from the user. The only one that we have to convert from a string to something else is times to write. So we get the raw value in string format, convert it to an int. That's all good and fine and good. We have the file name of the file we're going to write to, the message we're going to print in the file, and how many times we want to print it. Now we'll use the context manager yet again to open the file up with open file name. Notice we're in write mode here. We'll go over that after this and what that means as file. So for I in range times to write, this means for each I in the range from 0 to times to write minus 1. It's kind of a shortcut for a for loop. Range outputs a list of numbers starting at 0 and going not including but up to that value. So if you pass in a 3, it's going to give you a list containing 0, 1, and 2, and so forth. So we open up the file, and for each of those we're going to say writing line and the number that we're on, and then we're going to use file.write, the message, and \n. \n is the line break character, or the enter key basically. That's the case on Linux and Mac. If you're on Windows, it's CRLF format, carriage return line feed, instead of just carriage return. This is a carriage return. So you're going to see a \n/r on Windows. But most of the time, I don't know. I usually prefer just the carriage return. Anyway, if you don't know what that is, that's your line break character. And it's really straightforward. You're just writing the file. And just a reminder here, when you're done with this open with context manager, it just closes the file for you. You don't have to do file.close or anything like that. When you're using this with block, it takes care of all that for you. As soon as we go out of that indentation zone of the with block, like right here, you can just assume the file's been closed. And at the very end, we just write, hey, we wrote this many lines to this file, and that's it. And you saw it run, so you know how it works. So that's great. And it gives you this output.txt. Append versus write. What do we have here? Here's where we really dive into the difference between mode A and mode W for Python files. And this holds true for many other languages too, I'm sure, as far as what types of modes they support. So we have our two files here. File 1 will be testing out the append mode. File 2 will be testing out write mode. We just print out our message, grab a timestamp just for fun. And well, before we do the differences, I'll just say that there's more than one way to skin a cat and also more than one way to write to a file. In this example, in contrast to the previous one, we're not using file.write, we're using print and passing it a file handle. So you'll see here we say print our message file equals f provided as a keyword argument to the print command, or the print function. So really nothing crazy there, except it takes care of the \n or carriage return line feed if you're on Windows for you, which is kind of nice. You don't have to worry about which is which. You just use print, pass it the file handle, and it takes care of printing one line and then a line break. Okay, let's dive into what is the difference between append and write. These two blocks are exactly the same. The only difference is instead of the mode being the mode is different. That's the only difference. You have append here, write here. So append is just what it sounds like. You're appending, you're adding onto a file without erasing it. W is a little dangerous because you're going to erase the entire file and start from scratch and write whatever you do. So everything in this with block, once it closes the file, that's all you ended up with. The file is going to contain just stuff that you did to that file. Whether the file exists or not, it empties out the file and then starts writing. Whereas append, you're just adding stuff onto the end. Append is great for keeping a log file so that you can just keep continuously adding onto a file over time. W is nice if you need to output a config file or something that has a very specific format and wipe everything away and start over. But that's really all there is to this example. So feel free to download the repository, the education repository. There's a link in the description, and try these out yourself. Maybe tweak some things about these programs, write some different things, see what you can break. It's not bad to see some errors. Definitely try to break these and you'll probably learn something. But that's all for this lesson. Thanks for watching.